Thanks. Okay, so welcome. My name is Jake Holdaway. I'm going to be kind of the presenter in today's press conference and cover everything. If you want to leave some comments in, we have a few people that'll be answering. For those that are in the press, I can send you over anything, the documents that you have, so you can go through it. And if you want to go through that on an individual basis, I'm more than happy to do that. Obviously, kind of set the table. I invited Ben Abbott to come in and kind of set the table on the relationship and of Eric Ellis and some of the difficulties that we have. And then I just want to go through kind of what's going to be presented in tomorrow's meeting in terms of the rule changes and why they're problematic. Well, before we do that, kind of go through the spend. Kim has been helping us kind of uncover some of the things. But the news today, or kind of the thing that we want to go through is, I was elected November 21st, certified on December 1st. And after being certified, requested the general ledger, the books, or if you will, to kind of go through and do that. There were quite a few people within city government that told me of some things that I should be looking in for. I don't know if I really believed them at the beginning. I said, oh, I'll look at it, kind of get into what it was, and kind of pressed hard and couldn't get through to it. So I'll start there and then we'll do a Q&A right after at the end there. So first off, Ben, set the context of Eric Ellis a little bit, and kind of take us through how and why we were kind of concerned a little bit about him being a city manager and kind of his tendencies with the board of the Utah Lake Authority.
Thank you, Jake. Yeah, Eric Ellis was the the executive director of the Utah Lake Commission, which then was replaced by the Utah Lake Authority. And he took the position as the director of the Utah Lake Authority as well. And I had, for several years, an amicable relationship with Eric. And I am a researcher at Brigham Young University. I study aquatic ecosystems, including Utah Lake. And so we, of course, had interactions with Eric. We invited him to participate in the symposium that we held in 2021, and he did participate in that. But as time went on, we found out that he was involved in the Lake Restoration Solutions Island project, and that was fine. And in fact, his comment to me and to many others was, "Hey, I'm just as the executive director of the Utah Lake Commission, I have to facilitate every project, no matter what it is." And so I took him at his word, that this was just one project of many that he was administering. But then his actions kind of raised some eyebrows where he started to not only facilitate the project, but when, for example, there was a professor from UVU who was asking questions about the project, Eric went after them and tried to get them in trouble and said, "Why are you asking questions about this?" When I started speaking out about my concerns with the Islands project, Eric contacted one of my colleagues and told him, "Hey, can you get Ben in line and stop him from doing this stuff?" And I thought, this is weird. This isn't just facilitating a project. And after I got sued by the company for my critiques of their project, that initiated a long discovery process where we were able to acquire many of their documents. And I saw Eric Ellis come up time and time and time again in those documents. And so, as a part of that lawsuit, we filed a GRAMA request. It's like a Freedom of Information Act request, but at the state level, for the documents of the Utah Lake Authority and the Utah Lake Commission. And that is when I first was extremely concerned about the process. So Eric did not comply with that GRAMA request initially. He sent over only a few documents. Now we knew, because we'd acquired a bunch of documents from the discovery process in the lawsuit, that there were many, many communications that matched the terms that we'd asked. And so this stretched out over multiple weeks, multiple rounds back and forth, and cost us over $1,000 to acquire these documents from Eric. And when the documents came over it was immediately clear why he had been trying to obstruct them from coming out. And so what Jake has up here on the screen is a letter that we learned about through a grandma request of the city of Vineyard that showed this very concerning commitment by Vineyard City Mayor Julie Fulmer committing city funds to the Lake Restoration Solutions Project. And so we found that out independently. And this, of course, was a really big deal because there had been no communication with the city council. And then even after it went public, the mayor told the city council that she would withdraw this letter, but she didn't do anything for 8 months. She let the project continue on until after it had been stopped for another reason. And then at that point, she sent an email to Lake Restoration Solutions asking about for them to remove the letter. And that's at the same time that she informed the EPA. Instead of doing it when she found out about this, she waited more than half a year. And so when we got the messages from Eric, we found a letter of support for the LRS project that in 1 year committed 42 or $43 million to the project. And in
43.
another year, $43 million. And in another year, $60 million to the project. And the reason why I knew that Eric didn't want this to come out was he had not received approval from any of the other state agencies whose money that actually was to use it as a match for this federal loan application that LRS was undertaking. And that federal loan application was for nearly $1 billion. It was a huge loan application, and it's plastered multiple times in that application. Any misrepresentation of information constitutes a federal offense. And again, so it was incredibly disappointing. I mean, just speaking honestly as an individual, it was incredibly disappointing to see both the mayor and then Eric engaged in this kind of deception. And then not only that, but trying to keep the documents from coming out. And so I don't say, I'm not here tonight out of any ill will toward either of them. But when I heard that these changes were being proposed, that could make it harder even for city council members to acquire information about what's being done. I see this as a very serious threat to public participation in government, which is core to our system of government in America. So
I want to give context also. This is not the $5 million letter in the first application. This is a second application, or what we believe to be a second attempt for 10 million, because there were two applications. And
yeah.
so, and this form that you're seeing here is directly from the EPA's application that went through. And so to give context, obviously when I was over Way, and there were multiple times, you're talking about Keith Holdaway, my father, or me, or you're talking about Saratoga Springs or council members that would ask, are we connected to the islands? Are we doing this? Or in present, and we're neutral, we're not doing this. And yet you go to the documents, it was like, that's not what the documents show. Moving on to the second document, because I know you need to go. Is a second letter in September 28th, 2020, where this is Eric writing a letter to commit loans, commit funds again, but this time he's committing money that isn't really even, it isn't, periods, hard stop, isn't even over the Lake Commission. The Wacaraway funds are out of the State Department, Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. It's about 7.5 million that would go for trails, bathrooms, parking lot, that the state would build a park upon multiple different parcels of land. And so this affects obviously my family and also Vineyard City in terms of the commitment. And when this came out, I had already been in office. When this hit, I'd already been elected, and members of the Forestry, Fire, and State Land, many city council members from across the Lake Commission Board reached out to us and was like, not only did we not know about that, but he's committing state funds through this. And so
That's right.
I came in the city council of like, I'll get to the bottom of it. Let's get some documents. We need some clarity on this. We're going to answer some questions because I myself and many others had not been told the full truth. So I don't know if you want to add into that a little bit.
Yes, I do. So, like, when we got those messages from the Utah Lake Commission and then from the Utah Lake Authority, I looked through and there was no approval process for these letters of support. And that was confirmed as I reached out to board members, former board members of the Utah Lake Commission, and who were in at that time. And I asked them, "Were you aware of these letters that were being committed?" And they did not know about that. And in fact, Eric had taken multiple actions without approval, and so the chair of that board had censured him and required him to get an additional approval process before doing anything like this. And so he had disregarded that process. And then after the whole LRS and Vineyard involvement exploded, there was a journalist who did a Freedom of Information Act request of the EPA, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. And they asked for all of the loan materials that had been submitted. And so the EPA reached out to Eric and said, as the director of the Utah Lake Commission, your letter is a part of this application. Can we release it under this Freedom of Information Act request? And Eric said, absolutely not. That's a private document. It needs to be kept confidential. And the Utah Lake Commission made this commitment with the understanding that it wouldn't be released publicly. So again, an effort to keep his actions. So his actions, which were not approved by the board or chair of the board, and which weren't known publicly, these attempts at multiple levels to keep those things secret. And
Well,
again,
no, and also the multiple gramma of, instead of just being and working in good faith, you're talking about board members reaching out and like they're his boss of saying,
yeah,
I would like to know about this, and recognizing and helping people understand what is the Lake Authority. These are council members that are running a city. They have a full-time job and then they
yep,
run it, and then they sit on this random board. And so when they hear rumors or whatnot, they'll just kind of quickly check in and say, hey, are we connected to this? No, we're not. And it's just moved on. And this is documented in multiple public meeting minutes, recorded minutes of these denials over the span of many, many months. I don't know if you want to add there, but
yep,
so going into that, that kind of sets the baseline, kind of, for when obviously we went to the city council meeting and was like, Eric, what, wait, he will be over this. This will be very hard to get to know some things. Obviously, we ran kind of really questioning about a lot of the city finances and whatnot. Is there anything else you want to end? Because I know you need to go, Ben. But is there any other context?
Let me think. I think that this really covered it. I really do believe that people can change, especially when they're held accountable. And so the thing that's concerned me is there never has been an admission of any wrongdoing on Eric's part. If he came forward and explained, I really believed in this project and I was trying to advance it and I made some mistakes, I would totally respect that, right? Like this isn't a vindictive thing. There are plenty of people that supported the island project that are fine and good people, but that kind of unwillingness to acknowledge wrongdoing and the tendency to cover up that wrongdoing, I think is really troubling. And so I hope that you can get some clarity as a city. And I hope that the city council and mayor can work together to address these concerns, because I have not found it to be helpful when the concerns just get dismissed, right? And people have said, hey, you shouldn't worry about it.
Well, and this is kind of where we're at today, and that's why I'll kind of go through getting to the bottom of like why we didn't know about the total amount in World Trade Center Utah and prepaying that and different stuff. Is it's, you can ask, but it becomes very difficult. I mean, I can't tell you the hundreds of hours and grandma money that you put into trying to track down of like what did or did not happen with our money, right?
Yeah. Well, and here's the last thing that I'll say. when we submitted grandma requests to all these other agencies, because we did to about a half dozen, they all came back very quickly, extremely low cost. The most expensive other one I think was $150. And so it was really a contrast with how Eric was running the Utah Lake Commission and Utah Lake Authority, where it was really set up to keep from disclosing that information. So we just need, as citizens, we need access to these documents, and we need straight answers when there are concerns. But I really do hope the best, wish you all the best in Vineyard, and I'm so grateful that you're all working to understand this and get to the bottom.
So where things stand on this, within days of the new Utah Lake Authority board, switching out Julie at the end of her term and really pushing to get some transparency, they elected a new executive director. Within days, the state, Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, and also the new executive director came into my home and immediately apologized. It's one of the best meetings I've ever had in carrying that burden and trying to, fix the lake and kind of go through and do that. And that was an awesome, big step. However, part of that was, we need to find out about these WIFIA loans. Could you make public all of the emails, kind of understand where, who knew? And so in about a week from now, the Lake Authority will be, they agreed to do that. In fact, they were the ones that offered it, to compile all of the records, Eric's emails and everything, and put it together. We do know there's holes in the in what record is there. We don't really know why they're not there, but we'll get to the bottom of that. And that's kind of helpful to be able to trust the Lake Authority again. And I'm really excited about the members. A lot of their board members have reached out and kind of go through and do that. However, under those guys, obviously being a city council member, one of the first things I did is go in on December 1st. And I kind of want to set the table here. I had a lot of citizen or employees reach out and let me know about flights across the country. You don't really know if it's true. You take a phone call. You don't really know about the total dollar amounts. You kind of wait. Lunches, a lot of various things, travel, cars in different places around the state. And so it was getting into that. It was like, hey, we're going to look into what is going on and where everything is. And thanks, Ben, for being here. I know you need to take off. But kind of knowing that we requested, and I called David, the financial person, on December 1st and said, hey, I just need to go through everything. I'm going to get a couple of groups of CPAs or CPAs to come, and Kim, I can welcome you in to kind of walk through it. Just grow in a group of somebody that has a background, that forensic, that kind of look into things and kind of understand what was spent and what wasn't. We kind of went through and went through and did that. Told I couldn't get it, proprietary information. You can't see this, you can't see that. Knew a lot of people in the state auditor's office, knowing that we could get it, and finally kind of go through and do that. Hold on, Kim, are you muted? Let me see.
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. And so Kim's the background, kind of helping understand. I'd rather turn it over to you to answer kind of what you did, kind of bringing this to light. And then I'll kind of go through why we didn't know it, how it was worded. And then lastly, we're going to end on what policies are going to be changed, or not, maybe not this Wednesday, but next, that kind of are troublesome. So Kim.
Okay. Sorry. Mom on duty all the time. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of background, because I noticed that this was one of the misunderstandings, particularly on social media, for people who had watched council meeting, and it was the debate between an invoice register and a detail ledger, and it was presented in council meeting that it had been offered to Jake, and he had rejected it. And I just wanted to be clear about one, what the difference is between one and the other, and why it matters. So basically, in government accounting, it is not like your regular business accounting. there's different rules and procedures, and there's basically a budget is a lot. They got to stick to the budget. If they can't, they have to have budget amendments. And so we have this running living document. And the reason that we asked for the detailed ledger was in looking at the financial statements on our website. And I just for, I think knowledge is power, I guess. I just kind of wanted to go over what's available to everybody, because I want it to be clear. I'm not on a witch hunt. I'm just on, again, I really think knowledge is power. And so I think the more knowledge you have, the better decisions you can make. And this is particularly true when it comes to finances. So I'm sorry, I have this thing on my screen now and I can't move. So I just wanted to go over really quick what is available to everybody in Vineyard, because we talk about transparency, and I want, here we go. And I just want to show you what Vineyard does offer. Because I don't want to also be disingenuous and say that we're completely in the dark, because we're not. We've got budget documents here. This is straight. I am logged right into Vineyard City's website, and this is their entire budget document. It gives explanations of each department and goals and what they're trying to do and whatnot. And the reason that we ask for the detail ledger is we have everything for reporting purposes that kind of go in buckets, right? Because if you just have a list of all the stuff, it's hard to read. It's hard to make decisions. It's hard to know what to do, right? So we have all these buckets, and here's a small one. This is super small because it's our public safety. We don't have police officers, right? So this is our budget for this fiscal year that we're in. And again, this ends in June of this year. So these are our buckets. We've got full-time salaries, part-time salaries, compensation adjustments, retirement taxes, insurance. These are what it costs to pay our people. And then we have what they need to do their job, right? So this big contract services, of course, that's going to go to Orem, right? So, so this is all available. The reason we ask for the detail ledger is when you're passing a budget, you've got this information. You can see what was approved. You can see what was projected at the time that this was created, but they are all in buckets, right? And so as we look through this, we kind of want to know what makes this up, what goes into these numbers, right? To make sure that we understand what is in them so that we can make an informed decision as to whether or not the budget is appropriate. So that's why we care. So here's our public works. So we're looking at this and we want to know, we've got all these personnel costs. Those are the ones, they make sense. We know what they are. We're paying our people. But then we got all of these. And it looks like we've changed over the years a little bit in how we report and how our accounts are structured. And there's nothing weird about that. That's very common accounting practice. You change and adjust based on the information you need. But we wanted to know for public works, this 14,900, what kind of memberships, dues, and subscriptions are they looking for? Meetings, what goes into there? What kind of equipment do they want to buy? So, I mean, some of them are pretty obvious. Salt's pretty obvious, right? But we just kind of wanted to see what was in there. Contract services, who are we contracting, right? And that's what kind of sent us down this path. So the reason why we care about a detail ledger, a detail ledger is the whole picture. So for instance, when it comes to, let's take, and I don't know, I'm not saying this is true. This is just an example. I do not have all the information. So there's my little disclaimer before we go on. Is let's say that to start this little children's library that we have, that we received a grant for it, right? And grant funds are covering all of it. So the reason I want the detail ledger is because it's great to look at the expenditures. It's great to know what we're spending, but I also know that there's a grant for this much money that is for our library. It can't be spent anywhere else, right? We took that grant, we received it, and we said, this is going to fund our library. We can't spend it anywhere else. And so that's where I kind of wanted to look at a couple things and compare some of that, that could apply to like a recreation program or whatnot. And in that case, we may look at it, but we're not gonna super break it down. Sometimes we're buying more books because we have leftover grant money. Sometimes we're throwing a party for the kids because we have leftover grant money. So in that, I'm not really gonna dig into it, right? Because there's a grant and all of that money's got to go to the library. So with the detailed ledger, it gives us everything. It lets us know what loans we took in. It lets us know what loans we paid. It lets us know not only what expenditures we have, but also what revenues we have. And it gives us the full picture instead of this kind of partial picture that we have. And so we asked for the detail ledger. We were given an invoice register. So why Jake said what he said, he didn't get what he asked for, is an invoice register is basically everybody that we paid, right? So to kind of show you, because I know a picture's worth 1,000 words.
While you're pulling that up, Kim, the other thing that I would say is in contacting the state auditor's office, the first thing they were like, hey, don't work off of anything except for the general ledger. Like, don't go through this. It'll show you where things are moved and how. You should have got that on onboarding, and I was like, no, we're not, we're having a political battle of if this is proprietary or non-proprietary. And obviously going in, like knowing there's a couple of key things of what we're looking for as we get in. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Right. So we started, what we first got was just a vendor list. So full disclosure, this is me and some brave citizens work. And basically we just got a vendor list. That's all we got. It was this first column. It was just our vendors. And back in, I believe it was 2014, don't quote me on that, Utah passed a law that created a site called Transparent Utah. And Transparent Utah is basically where all of our government state entities go, and they report in a uniform way so that you can compare one entity to another. So we only got vendors. Okay. So we took to this crazy little spreadsheet and we just started typing stuff in. Like, well, we just went here and we went and we like 5-star barbecue. Here we go. This is an easy one. 5-star. We just submitted, searched, and pulled in Vineyard City, right? For all intents and purposes, that's all we care about. So I pulled in Vineyard City, 5-star barbecue, and I can see by year what Vineyard City has reported they have spent to this vendor. So we took a vendor list, we spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and we created this. All of these numbers are off of transparency. So what got us looking even more was we had a lot of blank vendors. So the city said we paid these people, but nothing is on the transparency website. So this is something anybody can go to it.
So 249 vendors that the city gave us and said we paid these people.
Explain that for 2 seconds, Jacob. I'll be right back.
No worry. So there was 249 total vendors. I know it was an alarming number. And first thing what I want to tell Kim is like, I can't tell you the hours and hours that we would go back and forth looking to try and find certain things that we knew we were looking for in the vendor list. And so it was aggravating because you have the state auditor's office saying you can get this, but they're not giving it to you. And if you could imagine, I'm in charge of the budget that has to be passed by, is it June 1st or July 1st? I'm like 60 days away right now. I don't have it, right? Still to this day. But we start to recreate this, and then there's 29 of them. And when you go onto them, it's a hotel in France. It's a hotel or a pub in England or Ireland. And it's just a massive amounts of food. And so it's like, hey, let's find the food policy in our city. Let's find the gas policy in our city. And so like, what's going on here? It's just a massive amount of spend, but without the detailed ledger, you really can't see, like from here, you can't see what department it's coming from. And an audit, to give you help an understanding of what an audit, so in this week, we're gonna go through an audit. Basically, an audit is, we gave $75,000 for travel. And in the budget, you'll notice that our city just keeps very high third grade level. 30,000 travel, 20,000 membership. Doesn't say what membership, it doesn't say where travel, it's just travel. Or it'll say meetings. And then meetings means food. This is the amount of, or whatever that necessitates meetings, right? Kim, you're back.
I'm back. I'm back. Yes. So sorry. So this is where we started. I'm getting a little PTSD looking at this, guys. So this is where we started, and then I just pulled this right off of transparency. This is just, I said for this date range, give me all the vendors and what we spent, right? And so I pulled that in, and I was kind of trying to compare it. But then we did get
After
invoice register.
And I want to make sure you understand, like, I don't want bad tone in going to city council meetings, but after 3 months, knowing that I can legally get this, and knowing of some kind of not nefarious, but just what we're dealing with as a leadership, it's, guys, you need to turn this over just to see. I'm not accusing, I can't vote, I can't change anything. Just let us know where you traveled and we can go through and do that, right? And so finally, we were able to get a redacted version. And, you know, one of the things is transparency with citizens. Like, can we share this with citizens? Because the citizens are the ones that actually get to choose what is our travel policy, what is our food policy, what is our gas policy, and looking and reading it through and saying, hey, is this appropriate? And so if anyone saw Vineyard Politico, it was about bringing 100 people together and getting, 8 to 10 CPAs to kind of say, let's look at our policies and say, because for whatever given reason, we don't have a fire station, we don't have a great library, we don't have a lot of the resources. So where's the money going? So finally we got it. And obviously in our pressure that we put it out, there were some people that found out about transparency and we're going to leak the $50,000 to World Trade Center Utah. And if you could pull that up on the World Trade Center Utah site, we were able to find that. And so that's when it hit the other day. And when you pull it up in the state website, we've only reported $50,000 to World Trade Center Utah. But in the redacted version and the screenshot, if you could pull that up, the city is telling us that there was over $168,000 in World Trade Center membership. But when we also found out, that's when it kind of, my suspicions were true. The people in September, October that called me and let me know, they were like, we have employees that are in Europe, right? And so, and the details, the description right there is where, they're prepaying membership for 2 years. And that was extremely, nobody prepays an association membership 2 years prior. And so that's when we looked into like, how did they get this approved to be able to find it? And that's what I wanted to tell everyone was, guys, it's hard. Some things can be hidden in plain sight. So to share my screen here with you, if everyone remembers when there were 200 people at the city council meeting in December, and everyone's eyes are watching it, the vast majority of us didn't even see it. It was an item agenda called economic strategy and contract. And they did it as kind of they have a non-voting thing where it just says, hey, we don't even need to think about this. We're just going to vote it through. And in which they did, and I'd love to give the press this, nobody knows that this is authorizing us to be a part of World Trade Center Utah and then having our employees fly around. And this is kind of the frustration that knowing that the Lake Authority or Lake Commission and their board members said is like, if you're not watching Eric, if you're not, when Eric's the city manager at this point, right? Kind of going through and doing this, it will be worded in such a way that you're not able to even find out what's going on. And I'm tired of it. Like
Well, and Jake, I do, before we get off this, I want you to be able to quote what I say. And I want you to feel good about it. And I don't want to send this down a track that can't be. There are reasons. I'm sorry, I was looking up Waffle Love, but there are reasons why World Trade Center would show only 50,000 on transparency. And that is where you get into the accounting part of it, right?
Right.
And we did, like Jake said, we have 3 years of membership. So technically the correct way to account for that is you expense one in the current year, which is 50,000, but we paid 150,000 to them for the membership. The other part was actually registration fees to attend a conference. So we paid 150, but the correct way to account for it would actually be put that 100,000 back on the balance sheet as a prepaid expense, because that technically is what it is. You don't expense it until the year that you benefit from it, which would be the next 2 fiscal years. Why do we care? We now have an expense that was paid out, voted on, all of this for 3 years, when it typically would be an ongoing membership 1 year at a time, that now, whether we like it or not, is going to hit $50,000, is going to hit our budget this year and for the next 2 years. So if you see right there, that first one, the ambassador membership, that 50,000, that's probably what's showing on transparency because it's for the current fiscal year. But then for the next, for the 2 years that go it from 4/1/24 to 3/31/26, those would be put on the balance sheet as a prepaid expense, and then they would be expensed in the following 2 years. So yes, that impacts our budget. It impacts our ability to spend. It impacts a lot of things, and that's why it's concerning. It's not necessarily, I don't want anybody walking out of this and be like, this CPA got on and she told us all that they didn't report it. That's not necessarily true. I do not know. But we have formed a question to ask and find out if it is on the balance sheet and it's going to report every year, and that's why it's not in transparency, or if all of it didn't get reported. It could be either or. And so again, I do not want to put out an accusation that may not be true.
Well, and yeah, and that's what I'm saying is going back, and that's why I wanted to bring Ben Abbott in, is of like the disingenuousness of like now being a city council member, me and Sarah, it's like you'd come in and you would say, hey, let's get onboarded. What are the memberships that we have? Who is going to be going across the world? Like what have we done? And also like the first thing is okay, when this happened last year or whenever the travel was, why wasn't it put on social media? What was the agenda? What were the objectives? Why and how? What did we accomplish in going to England? Or I think they went to France, England, and Ireland. Like that should be up for, like, especially for a city our size. So we looked through it. There's not a city in the entire county that's ever gone. There's a city in like Salt Lake where the company is, where World Trade Center is, and Salt Lake County. But they're the capital cities, right? They're not anything of our size. And none of them, when we looked into it, had ever prepaid 3 years in advance. And that's kind of what happened with that power grab meeting where they switched to a 4-to-1 vote. This is the same meeting where they shifted it so that we're going to lock in Julie's ability to be an ambassador for that organization. And we're not accusing that she traveled, and Sarah or Kim, I wanted to show that Julie's travel is not on the books. Only Ezra's, our city manager.
Oh, do you want me to put that on?
Yeah, you could pull that up. Be able to go
I
through
just pulled it up.
and our planning director. So and the hotels, like the $2,000 per hotel, or for the flights, 2,100. The Westchester, the hotel store in France for 1,900. There's just a lot of flights. There's a lot of expenses, and the detailed ledger. This isn't helpful. It would really help us to understand like what departments this is coming from, and also the confusingness of the World Trade Center Utah is that they broke it up. They put 50,000 in contract services department. They put another one in, what was the other one?
Here, I'll pull it up.
Capital expenses. And so it's like, one's in one department, one's in planning, and one's there, and they're broken out to be able to go through and do that. And like, my thing in terms of having to do this is I'm not a CPA, but bringing as many CPAs, whether they voted for me or people that they didn't vote for me, you know, like Marty or Amber, and saying, hey, can we put together a budget? Can people know where they're going? Can they be accountable? Can we see it? And, you know, it's been delay to be able to get through and do it. So, that's what I wanted the press to understand is like, as I've reached out, it's unheard of. There's never been a city council member that I know of into late March that is demanding to kind of get into the details and kind of understand what's going on at that point. And we don't really want to make accusations. Like, there are a lot of things where it's like $84,000 or $84,000 in gas. It's like, wow, we don't have a police station, we don't have sheriff, we don't have fire. That seems like hot, but until you see it in context of how many cars, and also asking for the P cards of where the gas is being bought. Is it being bought in Moab? Is it being at our Maverick here? You know, going through and just, I think voters expect us to go through thoroughly and understand, you know, line by line as to how much it is. I think there's 34,000 we rough guessed in just food meetings. So it's like, what is our food policy? Like, where is that? And we're not accusing that that's bad spend in either of them,
Right.
but as you look at it, you want to look at it holistically and say, okay, we don't have a fire station. Are our flights to Europe as important, or prioritizing some of the things that we might want? And as me and Sarah and others are over the budget, we've got to be able to go through it and get into that, right? So anything else you want to go through, we're going to make this transparent and allow people to play around and go through the redacted. This is a public document, so you can go in and see it. But even then, it doesn't help us. A general ledger would
Right.
allow us to really
Get
make
the full picture.
get the full picture. And that's why I stayed quiet. It was like, man, why aren't you saying this? Or how did you not know? You know, and it's like, well, we're playing a battle. And that's where I wanted to shift gears is we're playing hide the rock. So, and I want to make sure people understand, like, I'm doing the best that I can in terms of, let me stop this. Okay, there we go. Okay. Elected, obviously we had to demand that we get onboarded, and we listened to about 30-minute presentations from the department heads where they got to talk to us and kind of give us their vision, which was awesome. But in going back, me and Eric started to meet and ask and say, hey, I would like these things on the agenda. We would meet a couple of times, and I was like, I just want the money. I can't really say anything until I know everyone's budget. Like, I could meet with people, but it's pointless to meet with somebody if I don't know the problems or where I know where they are financially. So it sat there and hit up against the head to be able to go through and do that. It was pushed off, and it was like, hey, you're gonna do this at the offsite city retreat. That's when you're gonna be able to talk to the mayor. And I want to be very clear, in state code right now, all it takes is 2 city council members to vote to put it onto the agenda. The city agenda. So me and Sarah would email in and say, parking, this is a topic that we would like to talk about. And it would, you know, hey, we would like the detailed ledger, get it to us. We would like, you know, the WIFIA loan. On the WIFIA $10 million letter, the attorney took it. He's like, we got into it, and it was like, hey, there's enough that's there. We would love to turn this over to you. We'll get it. But it was like, hey, why haven't we got it? Right. And so after that, the retreat came and went, and it was like, we're going to have a full day to maybe we'll get the budget. And we showed up to the retreat. The mayor gave the state of the city address after about an hour, and she left at about 10:30, 10:45, like literally left for the day. And we were like, how are we going to put forth our agenda, like our city agenda of what we're actually doing, assignments and different things? And it was just left with me, Sarah, Marty, And we listened to the same PowerPoints that went through in November of some high level, third grade level stuff, right? And at the end of the day, they were like, hey, what decisions do you want to make on the budget? And I was like, we don't have any budget numbers. All we have is 50,000 for this pot. I don't even know where they're traveling. So let's find out if we agree for them to go to this conference or that, right? And at the end of the day, they were like, oh, this is a budget meeting. And there was some confusion as to what the meeting was or wasn't. And we said, well, if this is a budget meeting, why don't we have the detailed ledger to go through that yet? Like, we can't go through this with the third grade budget. We've got to get into, especially knowing from multiple employees that there were some issues of some fat that was easy to be able to cut out. So you might have noticed a month ago that me and Sarah then sat down with the attorney and we were like, look, we will call or email or in meetings, we will request Eric to add things and Julie to add things to the agenda in a Zoom meeting. And we come to the meeting on Tuesday and they're not on the agenda. It's state law. He has to do that. So then we found a way to do a special council meeting. And we found it through code and we publicly noticed it. And we just wanted to let people know, like, we are not getting stuff. Like, we would like to get into we held 2 wonderful meetings where we got to listen to you guys, hear your problems, hear your issues, hear different things, and be able to kind of put the agenda together. And then we got those things and we started to put it onto the agenda again. These are set of things that citizens want. We only need 2 of us. We want to put it on. And we were rejected. On the last week of the legislative conference session, on the Friday afternoon, I got a call from Nelson Abbott, our representative, and said, hey, there's a bill being run in the legislature that will change the authority of a city council member, that will require a city council to put in present rules on how you can put things up on the city council agenda. And I was like, there's no way. Like, 2 of us have to be able to talk about the spend of our city. We have to be able to talk about documents. Like, this is ridiculous. So we jump in a car, drive up to the Capitol on that last night, and I'm like, look, the state cannot pass this legislation. We as a city council 2 members have to be able to go through and do this. Nelson Abbott was fantastic. He took this stuff off the legislation. I left that day and I was like, how in the world am I, as a city council member, not able to talk about this? Like, I was elected by you and I can't really do anything without it. And so in last meeting, there was, I love our attorney, and I think that he's trying to find middle ground. And also Marty, there was a draft proposal put together to change, and this is where I want to end, with how our city will now move, because these rules have never been put into our city, and I was very concerned about having the power to be able to discuss problems. And so this is the draft agenda. Now, I know me and Marty went and met with our city attorney, and I'm very grateful for some of the changes that they put in, because 2 minority city council members by state law should be able to bring and discuss anything. Obviously, the mayor doesn't like talking about difficult situations, and neither does the city manager. A lot of them involve them. Obviously, department heads, and I want to be very careful. We're not accusing them of spending or doing anything, especially if the budget allows for it and it says you get 50,000 to travel and you stayed under 50,000. I'm not saying that's unethical, but I am saying that as a new city council member, I should be able to look at it and try to advocate for a different policy in a different direction. So I want to make sure this isn't a public attack on anyone. It's just more of what are the priorities in our budget, right? And so a couple of things, limiting. So we need to now, I do like that we have the ability to put it in paper. So it's not a he said, she said. We go into a Zoom meeting and we say, hey, we want this on the agenda, and it doesn't happen. I've done that for 3 months. So now having a public process in place where any 2 council members can submit an agenda item, and the mayor, we need to do it within 7 days before, and the mayor can do it within 24 hours. I talked to him, I said, I don't like the mayor, because we're equal, gets us immediately put it on and I gotta do it 7 days, but I said, okay, I'll deal with it. The next is that this isn't in law, and it was a troublesome problem for me, was that items requested by 2 council members for inclusion on the agenda must be placed on the agendas unless deemed legally or procedurally inappropriate. One of the many things that I hear from Eric and the mayor is this isn't appropriate for city council meeting, and they just don't want to talk about it. And so I have a very big problem with what is procedurally inappropriate. And so our attorney is going to go in and draft and look at that language, hopefully tomorrow or when it comes up, to find out, okay, I could say everything is procedurally, right? The proposed agenda item shall be brought to the council at its, so if it's denied, so let's say the mayor doesn't want to do it, 3 days later, she can deny it. And if she deny it, the proposed agenda item shall be brought to the council at the next city meeting for a vote on whether to add the item to the regular agenda. This was a compromise, because before it was, if she says no, you then just on your own have to go talk to Marty and Amber and find a third vote. And if you get a third one, you could add it in. I pushed back and I said, even though state code allows for 2, I said, I don't like the idea of giving the mayor the ability to deny, but what I would do is I would say, as long as it's automatically put on the agenda and you're giving me an agenda item, to pretty please ask me permission. So at least I can discuss it. And there's a paper record of the council denying our ability to talk about LRF, whatever issue that the city needs. And so I want the citizens to know that it is a give. Like, I don't feel like we won 100%, but I do want to say that Marty worked in good faith with the attorney. And I do want to say that, you know, Nelson Abbott was there. He came to the meeting to help us out as a representative, and I was really appreciative of that. Okay, public comment. This is where it's going to affect you. The designated period of public comment shall be included on the agenda. It's the same. Members of the public wishing to speak must sign up before the meeting begins. Provide their name on a topic, and that a lot of people don't show up on time. And we've already had an erosion of all of our comments on our official Facebook page have shut off. We've eroded it down to 2 minutes and then a 10-minute maximum. And again, a lot of this pent up anger is just not having the ability to talk and resolve our problem within our city council meetings. And so that's where it currently stands. The next is during the designated period, the mayor has the ability for speakers to offer duplicate comments to be limited. So saying, hey, how many of you guys want to talk about Topgolf? If there's 5 of them, only 1 gets to speak. I don't like that. I think they're individual, and if 5 of them want to talk, so be it. City council reserves the right to organize public comments by topic and may group speakers. So that's the other thing that I saw, and I'm going to send this out to everyone. Council reports, because for the past 3 months, I can't even put on things to talk about, or Sarah. The only time I'm given is my report time, where it's like a testimonial time, where it's just giving me the opportunity to go in and speak. And it says from now on in code that reports must be concise and focused on matters of public interest. Hard pass. It was public interest. I was elected to listen to voters of whatever that is, whatever that problem is. And if we need to talk about something longer, I know we can't vote, but at least I can come in and say, hey, you know, in my public comment period, I was able to bring up the hotels in France and the hotels in England, just to know that it was in the public discussion. That pressure a few days later made it so we got the Pam redacted list. And so public meetings are very helpful to add pressure. And so that's one thing tomorrow, or when this is discussed, that I'm very concerned about. Council members must request information from staff. So this is where I'm really concerned. As we've documented all of the issues, you know, council members may request information. So it says city council may request information from city staff to aid decision-making, oversight, and the performance of their duties. Such requests shall be directed to the city manager. Does anyone see that as problematic? Like, this is never limiting in the state. It's because you're oversight. Now, I can't go tell the staff to go shovel snow or change a sprinkler, or I understand that that's part of the staff, but I do understand that when we're just talking about information, like data of what is going on. I might not change what they're doing, but that's limiting it. And then request for information must be specific directly to council business and necessary for the conduct of official duties. Who determines if it's an official duty? Like I might not, like someone might come to me and say, hey, this is an issue and this is a problem. It might not be in my council portfolio, but it's like, there's an injustice. Usually the minority voice is the one that gets to speak about that, right? To ensure the efficient operation of city services and prevent undue burden on staff, individual council members shall not submit more than 2 significant requests for information at any one time without approval from the city council or designated committee. And then it says, you know, significant request means any significant requiring staff time of 3 hours or involving a compilation of data from multiple. One of the issues that we've had is that, you know, one of the rumors of getting the general ledger is that it would take hours. Right? Me and Kimberly actually works for a technology company that actually does this. And we called the provider of our service and said, how long would it take? Because we're hearing that this would take hours. And they literally showed us it was 60 seconds to download the general ledger. And so like, when they come back and say, man, Jake, you're just asking for so much, or hey, give me the $10 million PDF. That's what I would like, or anything else. It's like, oh, Jake, we just got to limit you, right? And then number 3, the city manager or the designee may request clarification, or he might be able to modify it. Any request deemed to be overly unclear or excessively burdensome. And that's a lot of what they do. Hey, this is burdensome. This is, you know, where it's at. And so to ensure the ability of city resources or core municipal priorities and services, the city manager may prioritize requests based on urgency and legal requirements. Okay, so why would we allow him to just, for uncomfortable things, just be able to adjust what he thinks is important and whatnot? You know, we held an election and we were like, hey, this is a direction the city wants to go. How does an unelected person be able to go through and do that? And then parameters of city council staff. All interactions between council members and city staff must be communicated to the mayor and city manager. Now, I understand that, again, giving the example of snow removal and cutting grass, I would never interact with staff. Like that's just inappropriate. You know, you don't want to, there's one leader and that is the mayor. And she gets to go through and do that. And until election happens, you need to respect that. But in terms of getting data and information, contacting a department head and saying, hey, you know, did we travel here or what happened there? And then lastly, requests for action or investigation by council members that involve significant staff time, resources, or deviation from planned work must be communicated to the city council and approved by the mayor. So again, it's or brought before the city council to approve. So I have to get a majority vote to say, hey, can we do those things? This procedure ensures that such requests align with the overall city priorities. And it's like, who gets to set those city priorities? Now, in meeting with Marty and the attorney, they've viewed this and they've said, hey, we will address some drafts to say we are going to adjust this to having this go through the city clerk, which I completely understand. But at the same rate, you're worried like, okay, who prioritizes that? Like, and so those are some concerns there. The city manager shall establish a confidential process for staff to report concerns about inappropriate interactions or directives from council, ensuring that these concerns be addressed without fear of retaliation. So this morning I was on the phone with the state auditor's office and I said, at what point does the general ledger get turned over and what is the legal authority that forces that to be in our hand? Because obviously our city attorney has told them, and hey, you need to give this. And I love Jamie and Marty as well. Hey, you need to do this, but that doesn't put it in our hands, right? That doesn't get it. It's nothing that's forced. And he was like, let me get back to you. Let's get back to you on that. And so the time clicks in terms of what we have 60 or 65 days till we have to do an official budget. So then lastly, the city manager in collaboration with Human Resources Department shall monitor council staff interactions and provide periodic reports. I was like, okay, that's fine, but it might be uncomfortable for direct department heads for them to look into those things. So I just want to close with, and I'll send this over, that I wanted to hold a press conference and just say, I knew this was gonna come out, and I'm trying to be reasonable with staff. But you go in every other meeting and you just say, hey, I'm not gonna meet until we get this information, these data, or hey, let's meet, and at the end of every meeting, hey, can you give this information? We're gonna need it. And so I know we've gone on and belabored the point, but I'll turn over any documents if you guys want to email. I'll put my email in the chat to kind of go through and do that. But with that, I know we have a lot of press that probably have submitted some questions. Let's see real quick. Do we have any questions in the chat? Leah, do you have any questions? Salt Lake Tribune, Salt Lake. Let me see if we can unmute her. To be clear, I have not yet received the ledger. Correct.
No, yeah, we do not have the general ledger. And to also be what they redacted from the invoice register that was supposed to take a lot of time, was actually just like, how you can get $80 if you go sign up at a rec center or a library, you can get that refunded. And then like utility overpayment refunds, deposit refunds, that kind of stuff. That's all that was redacted. And when I went through and I looked at it, it was like 3 or 4 account numbers total that we just redacted who the checks were written out to. So just so nobody thinks that we're giving this enormous task to them to fulfill. We're just waiting for that detailed ledger and hopefully help Jake and Sarah. And I mean, for that, like, I am just as happy to help. I've spoken to Marty and she's been super receptive, and I am just as happy to help Amber and Julie and to ask them any of my questions. This isn't secret. It's just trying to pass a really good budget and let them have the information that they need to use our funds appropriately and hopefully make the most of our dollars and minimize increases.
Carlene from the Daily Herald. It's mostly just not responding to an email or is silence in a Zoom meeting or oh yeah, that's something we could do, or I don't think that's appropriate. And so, I do want to say, as the drafts come out from our attorney, and this is why I wanted to show you, this is what it's at, and then we spent forever yesterday, and I want to say Marty was fantastic in kind of understanding the concerns of, you have an attorney saying, why aren't they giving this? And Marty's like, why aren't, I don't want to speak for her, but, and that doesn't even mean once we get it, that we have the votes to change the way they currently spend. It's just, when a constituent asks, hey, why are they in this country or why are they there? It's like, you guys have a right to know. And I wanted to tell you that in the press conference, like, I don't know, like, and I'm just, and I don't have the time to play the games, like the back and forth stuff. What is the reason they kind of just push it off? I would actually have you call Sarah and kind of have her experience to kind of go through and do that. So great question. Leah, I unmuted you. I don't know if you want to, from the Salt Lake Tribune, I don't know if you want, I got a text message from you. Can I get a response of your records request? Yes, you can. I am more than happy to jump on and show you the back and forth and the struggle to just know. And again, I'm not accusing Eric. Like, I don't know about the $10 million letter. Like, yes, there's a lot that's in the Lake Commission and Authority of like, hey, why were we connected to this, and anytime something comes up, it's like, I would think the voters would want me to look into it, understand it, and be educated about it, and not be, stonewalled. Any other questions?
Also, as an addition to what Jake said, if anybody wants to look at the spreadsheet, I can't share the Google Doc just because it would take one person who is mad at us to undo all my work and delete everything. But we'll make another one that's just a copy and paste of the work that we've done so far. So that if you want to look at the invoice register and see what we've got. I'm laughing because I'm looking at my phone and several of you have gone to transparent.utah.gov and you guys are searching vendors. So good for you. Keep looking. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So,
See,
and lastly,
I like this.
you know, I would love more citizens, whether they voted for me or not. You know, there's some people that are definitely not against me, or, you know, to put in and look at it and then obviously talk to me and vouch for, hey, I do believe we should be in Europe, or we do, you know, someone posted an article about the mayor in India with World Trade Center, Utah. It's like, okay, we should probably know, you know, the city's paying for that membership, why, how, but for them to commit the future council 2 years in advance and us walking in and not knowing about it is, you know, that's kind of what we're dealing with. So with that, guys, we'll end the meet. Is there any other questions? Okay.
Again,
Thanks.
anybody, you can reach out to me on Facebook. I'm happy to answer any questions. There were a couple rabbit holes that were gone down that were kind of false on Facebook. So I'm happy to answer questions and help anybody who wants to understand. So
And one of the reasons why we don't really want to talk about, you know, if you look into there, you're going to see resorts in San Diego and Portland and different casinos and Snowbird, and, you know, you can't make accusations against all of those things. You got to see it in the general ledger and then go, okay, what department? And then, okay, what are we doing there? And why is that a $500 food tab? Like, who is going to that? Maybe it's justifiable, maybe it's not. You could throw out a lot of different things and say, hey, this is really negative, and I don't want to alienate staff or anything.
right.
I'm concerned. There's definitely like some of the places and some of the types of hotels, you know, but that doesn't mean that they're guilty at all. So
No, and we really want our city to be a good employer, because when you're a good employer and employees are happy, you get the best. So that's also in the best interest of our city. So we don't want to come in and be like, you can never go out to eat, or you can never, I mean, we're going to cancel the Christmas party. By all means, that is not what we're trying to do. We had one question. How did the city explain the entries in the spreadsheets? Clarification on that. Are you talking about the invoice register that we were sent? Okay, how did they explain them? They didn't. We were just sent the spreadsheet, and we've just been going through and looking things up and trying to piecing. Yes, Sonia, and we're gonna try to organize a way to get that in council meeting. And I mean, again, let's just get answers and hold our assumptions and
yeah. And quite honestly,
no, sorry, Jake, Sonia, no, we have tried to, and there were emails that were not returned. So
getting the general ledger and understanding, so then you can ask questions, is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
And because you don't know the questions to ask, and you don't know if it's, you know, maybe you don't even ask the question, because in the general ledger it would say,
right,
you know, they're at this casino for this type of conference, and I don't even want to question that. You know, it makes sense. This is where we're at, and professional
right,
services, and, you know,
right.
so don't meet with them. That's why it all starts with, and I would hope people would be happy that we're combing over it. Like, just look and make sure we don't have a fire station, we don't have a rec center.
Right.
How do we get there? Like, what are ways that we can? And then also, okay, maybe there isn't a priority. I can go and ask, hey, what is this? Maybe we could cut it down a little bit here. match up to the priorities there, like.
Right.
And so, yeah, are there some things that, I don't want to say I don't have an axe to grind. I mean, yeah, there's some definite, I don't believe people should be in Europe. I don't believe, there's some definite like, but is it the city's employees' problem? No, because maybe the policy allowed for them. Is someone gonna get in trouble for that? No. Does it look bad? Do we want to accuse somebody in the city? No, like it's, hey,
No.
that's what they did. That was the previous city council. They allowed for that. What can we do to, if I would have gotten this in December, we could have jumped on that, talked, voted. If I could add something to the agenda, we could vote to get out of that. Or at least I could vote and say, I want a vote on the new council to say, are we going to honor this World Trade Center Utah? Can we direct the city manager to unnegotiate us out of that contract? What can we do? But right now, we're not even allowed to talk about it, right? So.
Right. So yeah, we do want to ask, and so you're right. We want to ask these questions. I was trying to, again, with the general ledger, I made the assumption about the World Trade Center as to why I think it may not be on transparency. Like I said, booking it's like a prepaid expense, which is a valid reason. But again, without the whole detail ledger, I don't know. I'm just guessing, based on my experience. But I just wanted to put that out there because something that at first glance looks terrible may not be. It may be perfectly normal. And on that transparency, we're only reporting revenues and expenditures. But I also think it's fair to say, hey, we've committed $150,000 to this project. Why? How does it benefit Vineyard citizens? Like, what are we getting out of it? How does it, how are we investing it into it for us?
There's a lot of different resorts that are on there that are really nice. And I know state national associations do go to some really nice resorts. But there's also some extremely high meal tickets. I like Mark's question, like how much can you go? And, there's some things I believe in Snowbird that, like why are we up in Snowbird or stuff like that. So it's like, what is the policy? So, anyway, I think we belabored the point. I don't want any accusations about anyone, but I could understand you guys being mad and angry at me being 3 months in and saying, how don't you know? And I wanted to document, yeah, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
And
Adam brought up he put up a good question in the chat. It was brought up that Salt Lake City is also involved in the Utah World Trade Center. Did they send their city employees abroad as well? Or do we know? I don't think we have an exact answer to that, Adam. We do know just broadly that a lot of people from Utah were there. So they very well could have, we don't know. Without knowing where to look. But again, Salt Lake City is different than Vineyard City. They are invested in the international. I am not saying Utah World Trade Center Utah is bad. I just think that there's a time and a place, and I think it's a great organization to help. We are in a global economy, whether we like it or not. And so it's good. It's a good opportunity because it's helping these particularly self-employed people who wouldn't otherwise have an ability to reach an international market to be able to do that. So there is World Trade Center. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying Vineyard probably shouldn't be involved.
But also what I would say is, if it isn't bad, and you see how they approved it December 13th, where it's like, we don't even know what it is. Like and I said this during the election, it needs to be so clean and easy for a third grader to understand this. Like, we're joining World Trade Center Utah. Here is the website. They do these missions. We would be going on this. We're going to the council to talk about, especially like right now. Hey, I just lost an election. There's new council. We're going to vote to commit these hands to fly across the country. And you'd think that there would be a handoff of like, we're doing these trade missions and this is what it's for. And we're trying to get a company from India or whatever, all these other countries that she goes to. It's like, we don't even meet to, like I said, the city retreat. We don't even talk about what it is that we're doing. So, and then also giving time, like if we're going to be so out of the norm and buy something that expensive, putting it out 7 days before, like stop this 24 hours before the city council. Like it should be worded, World Trade Center Utah, we're committing Because if you look at that, going back to the PowerPoint, it's like they're saying in that presentation on that letter that we were all in. If you look at the fine print, it goes, hey, there is no fiscal impact on this. The annually agreed upon contract costs, there's no fiscal impact according to what is allotted for the budget. So you look at that and you go, oh, okay, it's just in the budget. You don't realize, oh, it's $100,000 that we're signing up to that. And so is that against the law? No, but you're starting to understand the games and the just knowing years and working with those that are on the lake commission, the different city council members, and those of like, this is how Eric works and he doesn't allow people to know. And that's why I'm very concerned, is like, we can get outvoted and have it on the record that the three of them want to go and do World Trade Center Utah, and at least the citizens know, and then they can vote it out. But what's happening in the vast majority of things right now is our citizens don't even know, and it's so convoluted and it's so worded in such a way that you guys are not getting a fire, or you're not getting to know or even be involved in the process. So, okay.
And on the flip side, go check out I know Vineyard City Government posted it. They have a new website, and searching the agendas and the minutes, I found it easier. So go check that out too. That's good information to read up on.
And I like the plug that David Leray said. Whether you voted for me or don't, just say, hey, I'd like to be involved on a committee. I love 8 or 10 people, especially where they say, hey, I'm a dissenting vote. Let me tell you why World Trade Center, so that they're there, and it's not, we're not there to fight in Vineyard Politico, but we are there to, hey, this is the agenda of what Jake is. And if you're coming in saying, hey, I'll give you a respective counter argument, and you're not there to battle, like, that's great. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So anyway, thanks guys. I'll shut this off and send out the recording to anybody that wants to listen to this again. Love you guys. Bye.
Have a good night.